Welcome to Cinematic Recaps. This movie is called There Will Be Blood. The film tells the story of a ruthless silver miner who turned oil prospector, Daniel Plainview, that moves to oil-rich California. Using his adopted son to project a trustworthy, family man image, Plainview cons local landowners into selling him their valuable properties for a pittance. However, local preacher Eli Sunday suspects Plainview's motives and intentions, starting a slow-burning feud that threatens both their lives. Sit back and enjoy to see what happens. The story begins in the wilderness of New Mexico in 1898. Daniel Plainview works at his silver mine. Plainview falls and breaks his leg after blasting out the little mine with dynamite. He drags himself out of the mine and into town to sell the silver ore he discovered. He recruits a crew, which includes a man who is caring for his infant child. Plainview discovers oil in the mine when the silver lode runs dry. He recreates himself as an oil man by designing and building a pump. When the young father is fatally injured in a drilling accident, Plainview adopts the young kid and names him H.W. Plainview as a successful, if still minor, oil man 9 years later. He has numerous profitable wells around New Mexico and travels the state with H.W. to purchase drilling rights on private property. Plainview lectures the citizens of an unidentified town on his business plan. He claims he does all the work himself, only hires men he can trust to complete the work, and will eliminate the need for a contractor, a sort of middleman who will collect more money from the community that Daniel believes should go back to the landowners themselves. He also introduces his kid as a partner and claims that his company is run by a family. When the people start questioning him and arguing loudly among themselves, Daniel dismisses the offer and leaves, knowing that the community is too smart to be taken advantage of. Later, Daniel meets with a husband and wife and drafts a contract to drill on their property. The couple is hesitant, but Daniel persuades them by mentioning their children. Sometime later, the well begins to gusher. A young man named Paul Sunday pays a visit to Plainview's camp one night. Plainview buys information from Paul about his family's ranch in Little Boston, California, which he claims contains an ocean of oil beneath it. Plainview and H.W. go to the Sunday ranch and corroborate what Paul told them while pretending to shoot quail. That night, Plainview bargains with Abel, the Sunday patriarch, and Paul's twin brother, Eli. The cost is $10,000, which will go toward the construction of a new church, the Church of the Third Revelation. Eli is a dull but ambitious preacher and faith healer. Daniel promises to give Eli half of the money up front and the remaining amount when the derrick generates. Plainview gathers his workers at the Sunday ranch and begins construction on the first derrick. He also purchases practically all of the land surrounding the Sunday ranch, giving him not only the drilling rights but also the right to build a pipeline to the coast, bypassing the railroads and their transportation fees. Only one individual, William Bandy, refuses to sell. Plainview refuses Eli's request to bless the derrick before drilling begins, instead having Eli's younger sister, Mary, dedicate the new venture. Plainview buys Mary a new gown once she and H.W. become playmates. He promises Mary in front of Abel one night at dinner that her father will never slap her again for refusing to pray. Plainview is still irritated by Eli's solicitation of his workers to attend daily prayer sessions because they need rest, and Eli complains to him about workers drinking. When a worker is killed while attempting to free the drill, Plainview instructs Eli to organize for the funeral. He witnesses Eli deliver a powerful sermon on casting out the devil from an old woman with severe arthritis. Following service, Eli agrees to speak at the funeral and informs Daniel that if he had been allowed to bless the well, the accident would not have occurred. Eli finally accumulates enough funds to construct a larger church, which he names the Church of the Third Revelation. After a few days, the drill finally hits oil. The gases that escape trigger an explosion. H.W. is startled after viewing the drill from the derrick. He becomes sullen and distrustful. Plainview will soon have 3 active oil wells in the Little Boston area. Eli confronts Daniel, demanding the $5,000 that Daniel promised him and his church. Daniel assaults him right away, slapping him and pulling him to a puddle of mud, which he smears all over Eli. Daniel also mocks Eli's alleged faith healing skill, claiming that Eli accomplished nothing to restore H.W.'s hearing. Soon after, a man named Henry approaches on Plainview's doorway, claiming to be the half-brother of Plainview. Plainview trusts him and hires him as a laborer since he understands specifics about Plainview's family and hometown of Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Plainview admits to Henry that he despises most people and merely utilizes them to further his own agenda. "I've got a competition in me," he says. "I don't want anyone else to succeed." He also concedes that he can no longer accomplish his job alone. HW snoops through Henry's possessions and, envious that Plainview has a new love interest, attempts to burn down the house where Henry and Plainview are staying. Plainview does not reprimand HW, but rather finds that he can no longer handle him and sends him to a boarding school in San Francisco, abruptly leaving him on the train with his assistant, Fletcher, who takes him there. Competitors offer $1 million to buy Daniel's wells, but Plainview rejects the offer in their patronizing compassion for HW. Plainview threatens his competitor's life when he suggests Plainview retire to care for HW. He and Henry went to the Bandy property to ask about leasing the land for the pipeline's construction. They swim in the ocean after assessing the terrain. Plainview becomes suspicious when Henry fails to understand a reference to Fond du Lac. That night, Plainview compels Henry to confess. Holding a pistol, Henry isn't his brother, but he knew his brother in Kansas. When Henry's true brother died, he adopted his identity and traveled to California to find Daniel. Plainview executes Henry and buries him in a small grave on the Bandy estate. The next morning, Bandy awakens Plainview and informs him that if he permits himself to be baptized at the Church of the Third Revelation, he can lease the land. Plainview has no choice but to accept as Bandy admits that he knows Plainview murdered Henry. He is baptized after openly and loudly declaring that he is a sinner who has abandoned HW, being forcefully slapped multiple times on the dais by Eli, and being warmly hugged by the church. Eli also informs the church that Daniel has returned the $5,000 he owed Eli. Plainview greets HW as he returns from boarding school. HW now understands sign language and communicates with the help of an interpreter. He and Mary like playing together, and she is learning sign language as well. She signs the minister's sermon and marriage ceremonies to him when they marry in the late 1920s. Plainview has turned into a drinker, more misanthropic and solitary than ever, living alone in a large mansion and shooting his possessions with a pistol. Plainview becomes even more depressed when HW announces his plan to relocate to Mexico and start his own oil firm. He admits that HW was never his actual son and insultingly disowns him. Later, Eli pays him a visit at the mansion's bowling alley, where he finds Daniel passed out on the floor. Plainview gnaws on the cold steak left over from his dinner while Eli says that old Bandy has died and that his grandson wants to sell the oil drilling rights to his grandfather's land to support his dream of becoming a movie star, with Eli acting as the middleman. Plainview agrees, but only if Eli agrees to call him a false prophet and God a superstition. Plainview reveals that, having possessed all of the wells surrounding the Bandy ranch, Eli had already drained the oil from the Bandy land via drainage. Eli admits that, despite a lucrative radio preaching career, he is bankrupt due to poor investment decisions. Plainview follows him around the bowling alley before killing him with a bowling pin. When the butler arrives to see what's up, Plainview declares, "I'm finished." And that is the end of this movie. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for daily updates of movie recaps like this. Comment what movie you want next. Thanks for watching.